If you become the CEO, I'm taking half the employees with me and quitting. The company will go bankrupt for sure. Thank you, that's really helpful. Huh? Honestly, that's really a relief. I'll leave it to you to handle the employees who quit with you. What are you talking about? My unexpected response left Steve, director, stunned. When I gave him a defiant smile, his face turned grim. What's with that face? It's irritating. You think you've won because you have many employees on your side, but that's not enough to bother me at all. Haha. Don't make excuses. If half the employees leave, this company is finished. Don't you get something that simple? Steve, who always tried to one-up me and harass me, was visibly upset by my reverse psychology, and he let out a high-pitched yell. I can stop you guys, so do as you please. Ha, don't come crying back to me later wanting to return. I'm done with the company with a useless CEO. 1 month later. Please, I beg you, help me. Steve came crying to my company, begging on his knees. My name is Mike. I'm a 42-year-old full-time employee. I've been working at this company since I was a new graduate and now serve as the head of the department, thanks to my hard work. Managing a department full of strong personalities and only men is tough, but I tackle my job every day with a sense of responsibility. As I was preparing for an afternoon meeting, Steve, my subordinate who is 4 years younger than me, came to my desk. Steve was a standout employee from the beginning and had always been considered a rising star among the young staff. He's very confident. Mike, how's the new project preparation going? Hurry up with the next instructions. The subordinates are struggling because of a boss like you. Sigh, I'm definitely more suited to be the head. It's frustrating when incompetence at the top affects everyone else. The new project is progressing well, and we've received positive feedback from the client. Now, Steve, go back to your work. Dang. Steve clicked his tongue and returned to his desk. He's always been someone who tries to dominate me. It seems he can't stand not being the best. Since I became the head over him, he's been even more confrontational. I usually ignore his sarcasm and focus on my work. But there's another issue. Steve is very harsh to employees who don't flatter him. He would ruthlessly criticize their work, even if there were no real issues, saying things like, "This is terrible, redo it. Do you even have any motivation?" I glanced over at Steve's desk and saw him at it again. How can you not make a simple document properly? Maybe you should just quit this company. I'm sorry. Seeing a young employee about to cry while apologizing, I went over to them. Let me see that. I checked the document and it was well organized with no issues. There's nothing wrong here. This is good work. You can move on to your other tasks. Thank you so much. Annoying. As the subordinate went back to his desk, Steve muttered something under his breath and resumed his work. I returned to my desk, feeling exasperated. The company atmosphere has been really bad lately. I need to do something about this, and then another problem arose. You're such a waste. Can't you do even this simple task properly? I'm sorry. It's so irritating dealing with such incompetence. Today, one of my subordinates made a mistake at work. The error wasn't particularly serious, but Steve threw documents at the subordinate and kept harshly criticizing them. You're no longer needed here, so don't bother coming to the office. Just your presence annoys me and lowers work efficiency. You're a real nuisance. Steve, that's enough. You don't need to worry about it, I told the subordinate. Sorry. After that day, the subordinate who was scolded by Steve stopped coming to work. Even though it was Steve's fault, he unashamedly continued to badmouth the subordinate. Quitting over something like this shows a real lack of guts. Well, it's better for us now that the incompetent one is gone. Work will be smoother. Stop talking like that, Steve. Enough is enough. What's with the attitude? When I reprimanded Steve, he muttered under his breath and went off to his lunch break. As I was pondering what to do about Steve's misconduct, I got a call from the president's office. Actually, my grandfather has been the president of this company for many years. Only long-serving employees know that I am president's grandson. Excuse me, Mr. Smith, did you call for me? Mike, come in. Have a seat here. I was urged to sit on the sofa. This seemed like it was going to be a long talk. Mike, you've been with the company for a long time, climbed the ranks, and I think you've developed the ability to lead the staff, so I want you to become our vice president. But what about the current vice president, Mr. Brown? I thought this meant promoting Mr. Brown to president and making me the vice president. I had thought my elderly grandfather was finally retiring, but his response was unexpected. Actually, he has fallen seriously ill and can't return to work. What? That's terrible. Mr. Brown was a person I deeply respected, friendly and supportive. I was shocked to hear he had to leave due to illness. As I was processing this, my grandfather continued. It's a shock to me too, Mike. Will you become the vice president and help me run the company? I understand. Despite feeling unsure if I was up to the task, I wanted to meet my grandfather's expectations and nodded firmly. News of my appointment as vice president leaked somehow and quickly spread throughout the company. Steve's attitude towards me worsened. Once, as I walked through the office, he deliberately bumped into me and clicked his tongue. Ouch! You're in my way. Don't just stand there like an idiot. Another time, he slammed documents on my desk and left without a word. I even caught him spreading lies about me to other employees. Mike is all about sucking up to the boss. At a drinking party with the boss, he was so obsequious it was disgusting. And did you know he's actually president's grandson? No wonder he got to be vice president without being any good at his job. You guys don't have to listen to Mike. I'm way better at this job. You'd be better off following me. I had never sucked up to any boss. Seeing Steve spread such falsehoods, I was shaking with anger but left the scene. A few days later, I noticed something strange. Could you help me compile this document? Hey, are you listening? Even the employees I used to work closely with wouldn't respond to me. They just looked away and ignored me, starting other tasks. Stunned by this attitude, I heard Steve's mocking laugh behind me. Too bad. Nobody listens to you anymore. You have no place here now. It seems like Steve is trying to turn the other employees against me. Yet, I remained undaunted and continued to focus on my work. Steve, is everything ready for the next meeting? Show me what you've got. I need to check. Seriously, why do I have to get your approval? I'm just doing my job as your supervisor. Nobody thinks of you as a boss, haha, don't order me around. This worthless job, just do it yourself. When Steve said this to me, I could hear snickering from the other employees. Enough, you guys. At the limit of my patience with the employees' attitude, I was about to shout when the intercom rang. It's serious. Mr. Smith has. What? Shockingly, my grandfather, the company's president, had suffered a heart attack and been rushed to the hospital. I hurried to the hospital, but by the time I arrived, my grandfather had already passed away. Engulfed in sorrow, I saw my grandfather's funeral proceed solemnly. I will carry on your will, Grandpa. In his will, my grandfather named me as his successor and the next company president. After the funeral, with the help of employees who had always worked for us and admired my grandfather and me, I busily took over the company in his absence. These hectic days passed quickly, and finally, the day came when I was appointed president. As I entered the large hall where the restless employees had gathered and stood in front of the podium, the hall fell silent. Thank you all for gathering here. It is with great sadness that I inform you that Mr. Smith, who has supported this company for many years, has passed away suddenly. Before his death, I was appointed as the next president of the company. So from today, I will become the president, and together with you all, I will continue to make this company thrive." Just as I finished speaking, Steve came to the front of the hall, snatched the microphone from the host, and began to protest. "I oppose this man becoming president. He's only inheriting the position because he's the late president's grandson, despite having no real ability. What will happen to this company under an incompetent president? Our performance will plummet. The company's management will suffer, and we might all end up on the streets. Don't you all actually oppose him as a president?" As Steve made his speech, the hall began to buzz again. From the crowd, jeers like "I oppose Mike becoming president," and "Steve is more suited to be president," could be heard, probably from employees always fawning over Steve. "Steve, I'm in the middle of an important conversation. Can you please be quiet?" Even as I calmly urged silence, Steve heated up further. "If you become president, I refuse to keep working in this company. It's doomed anyway. Everyone should think wisely about what to do next." After addressing the employees, Steve left the hall. After the disturbance, while I was taking a breather in the president's office, Steve returned, accompanied by a large group of employees. I didn't know what he was planning, but Steve came in with a smug grin. "What now, Steve?" When I asked, Steve slammed a resignation letter on the table. "If you're the president, half the employees are quitting. This company's going down." "Thank you, that's helpful." "What? Really, it helps. Take care of the employees who are leaving with you." "What are you talking about?" Steve looked stunned at my unexpected response, his expression turning grim. "What's with that face? It's irritating. You might think you've won by turning so many employees against me, but it doesn't bother me at all. Don't be a sore loser. If half the staff leaves, this company is finished. Don't you get that?" As I continued to aggravate Steve, who always tried to get the upper hand and harass me, he screeched in anger. "I have no right to stop you all, so do as you please." "Ha, don't come crying to me later, wanting to return. I'm saying goodbye to a company with such a useless president. Come on, everyone, let's go." After saying this and getting the other employees to submit their resignations, Steve left the president's office. A month later. "Please, help me." As expected, Steve came back to my company in tears. After leaving my company, Steve and his followers joined another company together. It seems they had coincidentally met the president of a newly established company, Mr. Johnson. Steve and his group joined the company, lured by Mr. Johnson's desire to expand the business and increase staff. It seems Steve planned to take half the staff from my company to collapse it. Everything was going well until Steve realized a certain problem. It turned out that the employees who had been fawning over him and whom he brought to the new company had a habit of slacking off since their time at my company, and this was causing a decline in performance. Even after switching jobs, there was no change in these employees' work attitudes, leading to a drop in the new company's performance. Steve, who had focused too much on whether his subordinates were obedient to him, failed to grasp their actual work capabilities, which led to his embarrassment. Mr. Johnson harshly criticized him, saying, "Ever since you brought your employees and joined our company, our performance has been steadily declining. What kind of guidance have you been giving them? It really shows your level." The kind-hearted Mr. Johnson still gave Steve a chance to properly guide his subordinates. Worried about losing his job, Steve started to focus more on coaching his team. However, it wasn't easy to change the work attitudes of so many employees. To make matters worse, misfortune continued to befall Steve. "Steve, I want you to quit this company." Although Steve had only been working for a few months, he was suddenly forced to resign, and he impatiently asked why. "I heard you were harassing your subordinates at your previous company, driving them to resign," he was accused. "Why do you know that?" It turned out that there was a chance to deal with his previous company, and during that time, I spoke with Mike Williams. "Mike, that guy." Steve muttered my name in disgust. "It seems this story is indeed true." "No. This is a misunderstanding. It's all because of that guy, Joe. He's lying to frame me. I was being harassed by Mr. Williams, the president of that other company, so I brought my team here to change jobs. Please believe me. Well then, how do you explain this? Oops. Mr. Johnson laid out some photographs on the desk. There were pictures of Steve grabbing an employee's hair and scolding them harshly, and another of him grabbing an employee by the collar and glaring at them. To anyone, it looked like Steve was tormenting his employees. Then Mr. Johnson started playing a recording. Steve's voice, scolding his subordinates harshly, resonated from it. This is your voice, isn't it? How awful. Oh, but this is. You were tough on subordinates who didn't flatter you and constantly showered them with unkind words, weren't you? We can afford to have you crush our talented employees. I want you to resign. No way. I promise I won't do anything like this again. Please forgive me. Even though you say that, you haven't made any significant contributions since joining our company. Frankly, I don't think your abilities are that great. There's no benefit for us in keeping you. That's Steve, who was full of confidence in his abilities, was completely devastated by the decision to be fired and was expelled from the company. But his misfortune didn't end there. Shortly after being kicked out, Steve was sued by a former employee whom he had harassed and forced to resign from the company. The former employee had collected voice recordings of being verbally abused by Steve as evidence. As a result, Steve faced a claim for damages. Having already resigned, Steve struggled with daily expenses and now had to deal with paying for damages. Though finding a new job quickly would have been ideal, companies were reluctant to hire Steve after he was fired so soon from his last job. Proud Steve, refusing to work for a subsidiary, pleaded at the job center, only to be met with a sigh. I don't think there are many companies willing to hire you. As he continued this way, Steve's savings ran out, and he could no longer pay the rent for the apartment he had been living in since working at my company. Now, he is staying in a small, run-down apartment. Having narrated all this, Steve knelt before me. Please, Mike, hire me again at this company. I won't harass anyone anymore and will work diligently. I'm truly sorry for everything. Faced with this sudden plea at the company entrance, even I was at a loss. Employees passing by whispered to each other. Isn't that Steve? Nah, it is. What's he doing? He looks so bad. Steve's face reddened as he heard their voices. Steve, I understand how you feel, I said. So, as Steve looked up hopefully, I spoke coldly. But even if you apologize now, it doesn't erase the scars you left on the employees who quit because of your harassment. You didn't think much of it, but those you harassed were deeply hurt. That you don't understand such a simple thing and hurt our valuable employees means you have no place in our company. It's bothersome to have you here any longer, so could you please leave? That's, darn it. With a look of despair and then frustration, Steve left my company. Mr. Williams, this deal was a huge success. Yes, thanks to everyone's cooperation and hard work. Thank you. Having Mr. Williams visit the site and offer advice really boosts the morale of the staff. I'm glad to hear that. I was worried I might be a nuisance. Not at all. Everyone trusts you, especially since the employees who remained are all loyal. After Steve and his followers resigned, my company's performance improved significantly. The dedicated and motivated remaining staff worked efficiently, despite being fewer in number, leading to these results. The overall atmosphere of the company became brighter and more energetic, enabling everyone to work together harmoniously and enjoyably. Our new project, prepared with the cooperation of the entire company, was a great success, further brightening the future of our company. Today, I continue to work alongside trustworthy colleagues on meaningful projects, enjoying fulfilling days. It's hot again today. My name is Kevin. I'm a 30-year-old average office worker. Today, too, I was returning from a client's office in the sweltering heat. The asphalt road seemed to shimmer in the strong sunlight, and my whole body was drenched in sweat. Why is it so hot? As I thought this, I staggered toward the train station. The rotary in front of the station, with its fountain, was a little oasis. On a bench nearby, a businessman was sitting, taking a break and eating his lunch. There stood a woman by the fountain. She was a well-dressed old lady, but on closer inspection, she seemed to be visually impaired. She tapped the tactile paving with her white cane. Seeing her, I felt a tightness in my chest, because it brings back painful memories. Nearby, there was loud construction noise, and perhaps because of the noise, the old lady seemed confused and unable to understand her surroundings. I knew she was in trouble, but I couldn't bring myself to speak to her as I was about to pass her by. Then suddenly she said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, I can't see. Could you please take me to the station entrance?" Caught off guard, I stopped in my tracks. She must have discerned my presence by my footsteps. People who are visually impaired often have heightened hearing. "Where do you need to go?" "I'm really sorry, but I need to get to the next station." Seeing the old lady bow apologetically, I made up my mind. "Sure, let's go together." "Thank you." The old lady's face relaxed with relief as we linked arms and headed toward the destination station. "We're here." I walked slowly, matching her pace, and guided her to the front of the station entrance. The old lady bowed again. "Thank you so much." "No, I'll be going then." "Wait, I'd like to thank you. Could you please tell me your address?" No, it's fine. Please don't worry about it." "I insist, please." I declined when she suddenly asked for my address, but the old lady wouldn't back down. Finally, after much insistence, I handed her my business card and quickly left the station. "Kevin, you've got a phone call." For me. A few days later, my boss called out to me at the office. "Hello." I took the phone from my boss, and the caller remained silent for a moment. "A prank call, maybe." "Hello. I'm going to hang up." "Oh, sorry. Is this Kevin?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "I'm the son of the woman you helped at the station. Thank you for that time. My mother found the company's number on the card you gave her, so I called." "Oh, the lady from that time. I'm sorry to ask out of the blue, but do you remember a name Eugene Miller?" At the mention of that name, my face instantly tensed up. Eugene was the name of someone who caused me the greatest trauma and a deep emotional scar. Just when I thought I had finally forgotten, I'm reminded of him in such an unexpected place. But why does this man know about Eugene? I broke into a cold sweat at the thought, but somehow managed to squeeze out a response. "No, I don't know who that is." "I see. Well, thank you for helping my mother. I'll contact you again if there's an opportunity." "Yes, okay." To be honest, I didn't want to talk anymore. I didn't want to meet that old lady again, nor did I want to remember Eugene, because it would revive unpleasant memories from the past. It was a story from when I was still in elementary school. At that time, I attended a tiny school in the countryside with only about 20 students, and that's where Eugene transferred in. What he did to me back then is still vivid in my memory. Eugene, who had moved from the city, quickly became popular at school, but for some reason, he started to pick on me. He would come over and badmouth me with other classmates or steal my lunch money to buy snacks for them. In short, everything Eugene did to me is something I'd rather not recall. And then, the worst incident happened, but no, I'd rather not think about it. It only makes me feel sick. As I walked home, lost in these thoughts, I suddenly heard a voice. "We meet again." I snapped back to reality. Looking up, I saw the old lady with a white cane, the same one from before. "Are you heading home?" "Yes, I am. It's nice to see you again." The old lady approached me. "Thank you so much for last time." As she bowed deeply, I remembered the phone call and asked her a question that had been on my mind. "Excuse me, By any chance, is your name Mrs. Miller? Did my son tell you? Yes. He called my office to thank me. I couldn't bring myself to say more. Just thinking about those times made me feel nauseous. I remembered your name, Kevin. Are you still afraid of Eugene? At those words from the old lady, my eyes widened. So, it was true. My unpleasant suspicion had been confirmed. Yes, that's right. I'm truly sorry. The old lady looked sad. She was Eugene's mother. It's strange how fate works. I never imagined Eugene's mother would also be visually impaired. My own mother was visually impaired. Back in elementary school, despite Eugene's bullying, I never gave up and kept going to school. No matter how tough it was, I had a source of strength. It was my mother's words. It's okay, I'll protect you no matter what happens. My mother had lost her sight shortly after giving birth to me. She had been frail since childhood, and doctors weren't sure she could withstand childbirth, but she went ahead and gave me life, raising me with all her might. My father was already gone when I was born. Unable to work, my mother lived on assistance from the government. Kevin, I'm sorry. I can buy you the things you like. My mother often said this with an apologetic look, but I wasn't suffering at all. I was happy living with her. Above all, just being with my favorite person in the world, my mother, was happiness itself. When I told her this, she smiled gently. One day, when my mother and I went shopping at a local supermarket. Hey, isn't that Kevin? I was called from behind and, reluctantly turning around, I saw Eugene with a sneering smile. Is he your friend? My mother asked, but I didn't answer and tried to walk away quickly. However, Eugene and his classmates surrounded us, blocking the way. My visually impaired mother was confused and disoriented, not understanding what was happening. What do you want? If you don't need anything, just go away. Give me your bag. What? I didn't understand what he was talking about. Stop joking around. Kevin, what's happening? It's okay, Mom. Let's just ignore these guys. As I took my anxious mother's hand and tried to leave, suddenly, one of Eugene's classmates forcefully pulled me, and I lost my balance, falling backwards. Eugene pointed and laughed at me, ridiculing me. What a clumsy guy. Stop it. Eugene tried to snatch the bag, and my mother resisted desperately. The classmate egged him on. Seeing this, I finally lost my temper and punched Eugene hard. Ow, what are you doing? You jerk. Whoa. I tackled Eugene to the ground and held him down. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the classmates tried to intervene. Kevin, stop it. My mother screamed, her voice mixed with tears. Her face was pale, and she looked like she was about to cry. I realized Eugene was trembling, his face pale with fear. Glancing at my fist, I saw blood trickling down. I don't remember much after that. I was told by Eugene's mother that he wanted to see me, and as we rode the train together, I remembered that day. After so many years, I wondered what he could possibly want now. Are you sure it's okay to meet him? That boy has always regretted that day, especially since I became ill and lost my vision. I see. As I thought of a response, I suddenly remembered that Eugene had moved away. A few days after that event, he suddenly changed schools. I later heard that his parents were having a divorce. While his parents were discussing the divorce, he was sent to live with his grandparents. Perhaps he was taking out his loneliness and the pain of not having his parents around on me. But that didn't mean I was ready to forgive him. How is your mother doing? She passed away soon after Eugene moved. I see. She slowly lowered her eyes. I vividly remember how my mother repeatedly apologized to Eugene's grandparents back then. Apologize. What you did is unacceptable for anyone. When I hesitated to apologize, she yelled at me. Seeing my mother's pained face, I left the scene as if running away. I couldn't understand why I had to apologize when it should have been Eugene. He has always regretted being harsh to you. He wanted to apologize if possible. I know it's not the best way to put it, but I just can't help thinking how selfish he's always been. Sorry about that. Yes, I understand how you feel, but he's still my precious son. Hearing Eugene's mother's words made my heart ache, because my own mother had said something similar. I had shouted at my mother in frustration when I was forced to apologize. "I hate you, Mom." After hearing those words, my mother replied with a sad smile. "Even so, you're still my precious son." Not long after, my mother passed away due to her worsening chronic illness. It's been a while. When I visited his house, I was greeted by an awkward Eugene. Seeing his face brought back my trauma, but I managed to keep my composure. According to him, he's now married with children. His child is having a tough time at school and is on the verge of not attending. It seemed like a punishment for what he had done in the past, but somehow it made me feel even heavier. Sitting in the living room, I spoke to the uncomfortable Eugene. "You didn't have to meet me if it was too much. I couldn't do that. I really wanted to thank you properly for helping my mother. By the way, I heard about your mom. She passed away, right?" "Yeah, a long time ago." Eugene looked down, his voice trembling as he bowed his head. "I'm really sorry." At those words, I couldn't help but laugh. "What's that? It's meaningless to say it now, isn't it?" "I know, but I've always regretted it, especially since my own mother lost her sight. When my child started facing bullying at school, it made me think even more. I feel like I'm being punished for being the worst person." "Yeah, you were the worst. Have you finally realized that as an adult? Just because you were a jerk in the past, don't waste time fretting over it. Think more about your mother and your child instead." "Kevin, just so you know, you'll always be a jerk to me, but to your mother, you are her only son, right? To your child, you are their only father, right? So, for their sake, don't become an even worse person. Let me be the only one who thinks of you that way." Tears began to stream down Eugene's face as he heard those words. "Thank you. I don't need your forgiveness, but thank you." His face was a mess with tears. Feeling there was no need to talk further, I bowed and stood up. Eugene's mother came to see me off at the entrance, bowing deeply again. "I'm sorry. What my son did is unforgivable. Still, thank you so much for coming." "No, it was no trouble. Thank you." I nodded briefly and quickly left his house. "Mom, he's still the same jerk," I muttered to myself on the way home. This was for the best. The lingering frustration had cleared, leaving me feeling somewhat refreshed. A few days later, on a day off, I decided to visit my mother's grave. There was something I just had to tell her. Even after Eugene apologized and thanked me, the past can't be changed. But one thing did change. I don't intend to apologize to him, but I think I owe an apology to Mom. I could never forgive my mother for demanding an apology. That's what I never intended to take back the words I said, hating her. Yet, my mother must have been deeply hurt by those words. But right before she passed away, she said with a smile, "I love you, Kevin. You're my favorite in the whole world, my precious son." My mother gently held my weeping hand, and then she passed away. I was just a kid in elementary school then, and it took a while for the grief of losing my mother to heal, but I try my best, remembering her words and smile. "I love you the most in the world too, Mom. I'm so sorry for what I said." Tears streamed down my face. It's too late for regrets, but I apologize to the memory of my mother. I might fall in love with someone else in the future, but the love I feel for that person will be different from the love I have for my mother. I respect you the most in the world, Mom. I don't think I'll ever meet a woman I respect more than her. My mother, in my heart, is a dearly beloved presence. I'll always love her. I will not forget these feelings. Since then, I have been trying to support those who visually impaired in any way I can. So I have been volunteering in the community and am currently learning Braille. I hadn't met Eugene or his mother since that day. I don't know what I might say, remembering the past, and I don't want to meet them ever again. It's better for both of us to walk completely separate paths. I want to let go of the negative feelings and keep trying my best, hoping to somehow repay my mother for my regrets. Surely, my mother will be watching over me from heaven.